Okay, welcome everyone. We have a special guest. We have Tony from Analog Toys. We're going to get straight into it. So Tony, tell us about Analog Toys.
So Analog Toys is a YouTube channel that I started almost 5 years ago. The fifth birthday is coming up in July, where I could basically merge my two passions for filmmaking and vintage and retro toy properties. I've been fascinated by toys all my life. I was pretty lucky as a kid. I had a lot of different stuff. Didn't manage to hang on to everything. I do have some of my childhood toys, but it's been a lifelong passion of mine. I'm pretty certain that there's only been like a 3-year period of my life where I wasn't collecting toys. You know, my early teenage years when I was pretending to surf. I never became a very good surfer. But at the age of 16, I went to a toy show with my dad because he collects old die-cast metal soldiers. I went to a toy show with him at 16, and at one of the tables, the guy had a milk crate full of old $6 Million Man toys and old Action Man toys, which were my favorite toys as a child. And my dad, this was back in the early 90s. I think it was $100 for this box full of toys, which was still quite a bit of money back then. But he was like, look, if I get you this and it sets you off on your collecting journey, I'm more than happy to do that. So I picked up this lot of toys and I've never stopped collecting. And and about 5 years ago, I decided to start sharing my passion with the world on YouTube. So
yeah, no, it's great because growing up, I'm of a similar age, and what I would get, magazine or comics from both the States issues or even UK comics. So the UK ones you'd open up and you'd get the Palatoy advertisements, or you'd get Action Force or whatever, and you'd be like, okay, this is slightly different, and am I the only one who knows about this here? And you're kind of seeing all these kind of alternate universe sort of things happening. And occasionally here we would get both. So you'd see both on the shelf and you're like going, okay, is this a same one or is it a different brand? So it was very, very interesting. So you're saying also about video production as one of your passions. So this is something that was able to you to kind of you were saying you wanted to combine both hobbies. So were you kind of self-trained with video production?
Yes, very much so. I bought my first video camera in 2007. I spent a long time in the military, and I got it when I left the military. I went to work private security in Iraq, and I was there for 4 years. And the first couple of months I was there, I bought a video camera, much like every other guy who was working out there would just leave it on the dashboard of the car as you're driving around Baghdad, and you never knew kind of what footage you were going to capture. And I've got a good friend in the UK who works in documentary filmmaking. He's basically started to coach me over the next 4 years. And I started, while I was working there, basically creating this insider sort of documentary about the private security industry in Iraq, which unfortunately, due to a confidentiality clause in my employment contract, was never able to see the light of day. And as I was getting ready to leave Iraq, I was like, I'd spent 4 years not only working there, but working on this kind of side project. I'm like, well, what do I do next? I was getting ready to leave Iraq. I was trying to look for something to do. But well, at the time, the only toy line I collected was Action Man. It's a huge toy line. It ran for 18 years in the UK. And I had the vast majority of all the different toys. I was like, no one's ever made people have written a lot of books about Palatoy's Action Man, but no one had ever made a documentary. I'm like, why don't I take 6 months or 9 months off work when I leave Iraq? I'd saved up a bit of money and make this documentary. So the first thing I did was reached out to the Victoria and Albert Museum of Childhood in London, because I knew they had a lot of transcripted interviews with some of the original designers, and said, look, can you put me in touch with some of these people? And they said, oh, we won't give out their contact information, but if you want to write an email, we'll forward it. So I wrote an email to Bob Breakin, the chief designer of the Action Man line, and the museum forwarded it on, and he contacted me within a couple of days and said, yeah, let's do this. Let's go and make this documentary. So that was a passion project of mine that went on for about 18 months, and one of the best years of my life, that experience making that.
And that's amazing that like you were able to kind of communicate with the people who developed, you know, the toys that you've always been passionate about, but also the insight to why they did it. And like I've seen a lot of stuff online of with different toy makers and that, and it's really fascinating the direction they're coming from, what they're thinking about, you know, the influences by the market, the kind of corporate hierarchy coming down to them, and then saying, no, we want to make something that's really cool for the kids, and this is something I want to play with.
Yeah, honestly, for me, the first time I met Bob Breakin, it was like a huge rock and roll star meeting Elvis for the first time. I don't really get starstruck, and I don't think I kind of got starstruck with Bob, but that's how important it was. That was the celebrity, you know, I want his autograph. I don't want Brad Pitt's autograph.
Yeah.
I want this toy designer's autograph. And the blessing in disguise for me is that now it's 10 years since I made that first film, that documentary, 10 years this year. And I'm very close friends with Bob Breakin. I'm actually doing a live interview with him as part of Iconicon in July. I think the interview's on the 11th of July. It'll be aired on YouTube. So, but you know, we talk often. I've made a number of videos about Palatoy's Action Force, which he's been incredibly helpful with. We have this really good, respectful relationship where he appreciates the videos that I'm creating about toy lines that he worked on, and vice versa. The videos are made so much better through his input and giving me some of the inside, you know, designer's knowledge and talking about some of the unreleased prototypes and things like that. So it works very well.
It sounds like you live in the dream, because it's like, you know, a lot of people don't actually go and do that. Like they might think about it and they put it kind of aside, but they don't look at it as, hey, I can reach out. And, you know, in some cases with someone decides, oh, I'm going to reach out and do this, and then someone responds back, and then suddenly you're on this whole new journey. So would you ever thought, if you, like you've been doing analog toys for 5 years, you went back 6 years ago, would you be thinking this is where you are now? And you've got people all around the world watching the videos that from your own personal passion, your own personal drive.
Well, I always had the confidence that I could make good videos that people would enjoy watching, but I didn't really have a vision of where it was kind of going to go. And certainly in the last, I would say 12 months, it's evolved into there's a big sort of core community that has grown up around not only my channel, but also a lot of my viewership also kind of transfers over to the fantastic YouTube channel Retro Blasting, which is a channel that really inspired me in the first place. And I now do, I have my own Patreon. I have a number of members on there, and I'll do some Patreon only live streams and talking to the guys in those chats. They've started, like you would have seen videos where supporters of the channel send donations to Analog Toys. Well, these guys are actually sending each other retro toy gifts and stuff like that. And they all I get really uncomfortable. A lot of them keep thanking me for building this community. And I'm like, no, I was just making videos. You guys supporting the channel are the ones who really built the community. And I appreciate them every single day.
But it is a motivation. It's like for a lot of people, like people like yourself and Michael and Retro Blasting and a few other ones that are out there that I kind of follow. It's like a beacon in a way. It's like people are they're looking for it, they're hearing about it, and then you go and do it, and then it energizes them to go and be proactive. And I think I really think, because people go about, you know, you get some people go, oh yeah, you're collecting this. I actually see it as a amazing thing, especially for mental health, because I think it gives people an opportunity to express themselves in whatever way. I always have this talk with people who do stuff that are artistically or 3D or games development or whatever, but even with collecting or having a hobby, they're actually able to, you know, involve themselves into something, and also there's something else to look forward to. And that, I think with a lot of people, there's a lot in their lives, they might just have their work or their school or their studying, and that's all they really have, or they're just, you know, they're at home just, you know, looking after the family. That's all they have. But then,
Yeah.
you know, people like yourself come along and then do something, and then people are looking forward to the next episode. They're actually going, hey, I want to get back into that. You know, it's that motivation. And I think especially in these days, it was so much talk about mental health. It's like people like yourselves, I don't think you realize how important you are actually, for a lot of people. I'm not saying they're like dependent, but it gives people, like, you have your own drive to make that, and you've had some really great opportunities to do things, which is fantastic. But what you output, enables a number of other people to go, hey, I want to get into that too. And that's where these communities come in. That's how you've made friends with many other people around the world. But it's a big thing, especially with lockdown in recent times. But yeah, I think I can see why, you know, people always say thank you to people like yourself, because it is a driver.
Yeah, this is going to go from a really casual conversation into something quite deep and meaningful now. So,
Yeah.
I really should be thanking them as well. So I talk quite openly, on my, so for people who don't know what Patreon is somewhere where people can, for a monthly fee, there are a number of different tiers. You can go over, join the Analog Toys Patreon for a variety of other content. And I just do a lot of video messages where I sit down in front of the camera and I kind of talk about what's going on. And I actually talk quite openly on the Patreon about my own challenges with mental health. And running Analog Toys is actually, I never set out to run Analog Toys for this reason, but it has really been a positive influence on my mental health. You know, I have my own challenges due to the fact, you know, through military service and my time in Iraq and some other things, I have some mental health challenges. And for me, like, the worst thing is a wandering mind.
Yes.
Analog Toys keeps me focused. It's something I'm genuinely passionate about. I absolutely love the channel and the community around it, and always being enthusiastic about creating new content keeps my mind in a very positive place. So,
and it's good.
If my channel is if my channel is helping anyone else with those difficulties, I want to thank them for tuning in as well, because if people weren't watching, I wouldn't have continued. And it certainly has helped me. So,
but it's true. It works both ways, and it does create that sort of community. And it's like, you're true. And that's one thing I kind of bring up a lot. And people have always talk about, the wandering mind, and, you know, it gives them more focus. I think I probably see it a lot because dealing in ICT. So you see a lot of it, and also especially with the pop culture kind of scene. But no, I think it's a great thing. I think for you to express that these are things that you do to help yourself, but also it's helping others. All right, now this is one thing is many people probably want to heard you talk about Action Force. Now, some people had heard of Action Force. Like, I heard about Action Force when I was a kid reading comics, which were comics that were coming from the UK, that were influenced from that. And then I'd get the comics from the US, and they'd have G.I. Joe. And then sometimes I'd be like, hang on, that boat looks like that boat, but there's a little difference. So what's the difference?
The original Action Force actually has quite a complex history. So there have been I've done a number of videos about the original Palatoy Action Force toy line, which was released first released in 1982. And I've had a number of countless YouTube comments over the years with people saying this is just a British ripoff of G.I. Joe. Well, the thing is, G.I. Joe in America, the 12-inch G.I. Joe had been dead and buried since around 76, I think 76, 77, it had gone away. And Hasbro was kind of off doing other things. Following on from the success of Star Wars, and particularly the new scale, Hasbro hatched a plan to reintroduce G.I. Joe in a smaller scale, backed up by a comic book, with a planned release date of January, February 1982. In the UK, Action Man had not died away like G.I. Joe had. It was still going. So it was the British 12-inch version of G.I. Joe. It was still popular, but it was an expensive toy. And Palitoy was also selling Star Wars figures under license. Now, they wanted to keep their sort of homegrown brand alive. So they said, we're going to keep making Action Man in the 12-inch scale, but what if we scale him down as well to the same size as Star Wars and bring it out? And they actually, Palitoy's Action Force launched at the London Toy Fair in, I think, January of 82, and Hasbro's A Real American Hero G.I. Joe line launched in February of the same year. Neither company knew that the other one was doing, so that no one copied each other. They were basically both copying Kenneth Star Wars and putting a military spin on it. So the Palitoy Action Force toy line is quite unique, and it had some very interesting variations where going into the second and third year of the toy line, they brought a lot of Hasbro G.I. Joe product to the UK, but recolored the figures, recolored the vehicles. And then I think it was around 1985, Palitoy shut up shop. The company closed down. We didn't really have a lot of Action Force on the shelves in the UK in 86. And then in 87, it came back again under the Hasbro banner called Action Force International Heroes. And that was literally just a relabeled G.I. Joe toy line. As a child growing up in England, I actually didn't even realize there was a connection between the two toy lines because the packaging art was so different. But when it first came out in 87, I was hooked on that toy line. And that was kind of the era when we were getting Snake Eyes version 2, Flint, Lady J, all of those classic characters, and a weekly comic to go along with it that I absolutely love.
The massive tie-in. So I was influenced by, because every holiday we'd always get the annual book. You'd always be like something 75, you'd like Mike Man or whatever, and occasionally some of those books would have an ad in it. And I think it was just made for the Australian market, but you'd be looking at it going, what's this? What's this? And it was, it's like, okay, I'm never going to see this because it's in the UK. But now I know your big passion is Action Man. So why Action Man?
Because when I was a child, I've got an older brother who's 6 years older. So when I got to the age of wanting to get into toys, the age gap between me and my brother was such that, when he'd reached 10 and I was still only 4 years old, he was more listening to music and using his pocket money to buy records and things like that. Wasn't really interested in his toys, so I got handed down a lot of his toys, which is why I cover a lot of 1970s stuff on the channel, because from him I got the $6 Million Man, and I got Evel Knievel toys and this kind of thing. But I remember the first time I was ever given an Action Man. I don't know if it was one of my brothers or if it was a new one that was bought for me, and but asking my dad, like, what's this? He was dressed as a soldier, and my dad says, explains what a soldier is, and it fights in the army and protects the country. And for one thing, I made a decision that day that I was going to go in the military later in life, which I did. I ended up serving in both the Australian Army and the British Army over my time. But there was, because Action Man was not linked to any kind of mythology. There wasn't comics. There were a few paperback books, but I didn't read those when I was a kid. There wasn't a cartoon. Action Man was just, it was whatever you wanted him to be. And my favorite Action Man figure became almost my best friend in childhood. So I think it was that I had more of a relationship with this inanimate object than I did with other toys. And also I have a great fascination for military stuff, and all of the different accessories you could customize Action Man. It just appealed to my sensibilities.
That's interesting. I always ask with people who have their different passions, what is that connection? So, some people, like yourself, like the, Action Man. Others will look at more Master Universe. Some people look at more modern toys, or they're into plushies or whatever it is. I'm usually asking them about what's made that your thing and what's that connect and that thing. And I always see that similar theme. And I always ask that because there's also a lot of other people who, if they're hesitant about, having a hobby of collecting, they're going to hear that, oh, there's people from all these different demographics that have that they share a passion that's very similar, even though it's different themes.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I remember as a kid, I remember seeing ads for Action Man, and it's funny. It seems really simple now, but it really hooked me because it was like, oh, move the little lever on the back of his head, and his eyes are moving.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember seeing that on TV and just thinking, wow, that's amazing. And going to toy stores, and they had Action Man displays where you'd be standing there, and they'd have someone there standing and so going, all right, you can move the lever on the back of his head. And I thought that was the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
So yeah, because I'd always, I ended up getting a Bionic Man many years later, but I always wanted one as a very young kid, sort of thing. So and then Star Wars came along, and that's history, like the rest of us. Now, 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 for those of you who are watching, Tony has a ton of videos on all these different areas. So if you're kind of going, oh, we're bouncing onto this, you've got to go and check out, Analog Toys YouTube channel. It's just amazing stuff. One thing I want to kind of ask also, especially about having a YouTube channel and running and kind of you having a community, that sort of thing. What are some of the challenges you've had with, especially just kind of using YouTube as a platform in the last 5 years?
Well, some of the trolls.
Yeah.
Particularly over the last, I'd say 12 to 18 months, as the channel has really started to grow. I've actually had to call in a little bit of backup, a little bit of help. The channel makes a little bit of money. It's certainly, I still have a full-time job. It's certainly not anything where I'd love to be able to quit my day job and do Analog Toys full-time, but that's probably more than another 5 years away at this stage, I think. But the one thing that's really surprised me, I've had to get in moderators and people who can basically go and look at the comments on my behalf and filter through the comments and stuff. And I've just been very, very fortunate. There's some people who have just been longtime fans of the channel who I've connected with and become friends with, and they just want to do it to help me out. I literally had a video chat this morning with a friend of mine, Michael Schaefer, who's been a supporter of the channel for a long time. He now is like a almost background crew when I run live streams. He helps me put the comments up on the screen, and I was just chatting with him this morning about Iconicon. But some of the other challenges I think I've had is unlike retro blasting, where there's kind of a crew of them. There are some videos I've tried to create over the years where I've needed a cameraman, and I'm a one-man operation here, and it restricts kind of what I'm capable of doing. I try and rope the wife in, but she's not very interested a lot of the time. But also being here in Australia, I suppose the greatest challenge is that the toys are so expensive here, and if you're buying them from overseas,
yes,
you're paying extortionate amounts for shipping. Sometimes you just have to bite the bullet. There have been certain videos I've made over the years that I refused to make unless I didn't have to have the entire toy line, but there were certain key pieces. One I distinctly remember, I did a video about the old Gabriel Lone Ranger toy line from the 70s. They're like 10-inch tall, kind of like Action Man figures, but a little bit smaller, had the removable clothes and horses and everything. And I did not want to make that video without a large wooden Dodge City play set.
Yeah.
That thing is massive. It's as big as this table I'm sat at now. And it's made of like a plywood type material. It's very, very heavy. And I can't remember exactly what I paid for it out of the Netherlands, but I paid close to like $120 to have it shipped here as on top of the cost of the toy. So for all the Aussies out there watching, if you're a toy collector, I feel your pain.
Yeah.
I feel your pain. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the postage and delivery is, I think, being so far away from everywhere, it does cause a lot of issues, and I see that as well when people are kind of doing the videos of actually based in the States. So they're talking about, oh yeah, I went and got a couple of these, and it ended up only costing like $25. And I'm like, well, that's like one here. So that's if you can find it. So yeah,
literally when I was talking to my friend Michael Schaefer this morning, he went to a toy show the other day, and he said he never ended up getting anything for himself. He was just picking up some stuff for some other guys in the community. And he mentioned that he bought Joseph, who's a friend of both of ours, he bought him a vintage cloud car with a pilot for I think he said $20 or $30. I was like, okay. And I paid $100 Australian for mine not that long ago, which is like $70 American.
Yeah,
he's paying like 20, 25.
That's
plus shipping.
That's really good. So
yeah.
Well, I might just leave it here, Tony. So for everyone who's watching this during the TGF stream via New Game Plus TV's Twitch channel, we're going to have all Tony's information in the chat and also on the TGF Facebook page while the event's on. If you're watching this months later on the Cause and Effect YouTube channel, we will have all Tony's information down below in the description. So check out his videos. His videos are just really, really well produced. They're always interesting. You're worth checking him out. Subscribe, follow, support Tony, because he does, I think, an absolute fantastic job. So on behalf of Cause and Effect Gamers and the TGF virtual event, thanks for your time, Tony.
My pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.